Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. It is Monday, the 29th day of April, 2024, and we're really at the crossroads right now. Today is going to be a very, very important day. It's going to determine basically what's going to happen in Israel's short-term future. The hostages, are they going to be released? Is there going to be a deal? Or is Israel going to go into Rafah with a 6-week at least excursion? Anthony Blinken says hope Hamas makes the right decision on the hostages because supposedly they've got this very, very generous offer from Israel. And Hamas has indicated that the outline is satisfactory to them. We have to wait for today sometime to get their final answer. We'll see what happens, see if Israel capitulates. But it's going to be very interesting to see. Now, the problem, of course, in the internal politics of Israel, you have some people on Netanyahu's side, on the Likud side, that say if you make a hostage deal now, instead of going into Rafah, we're going to bolt the party and your government goes down. So we got mutiny within the ranks. So what a day. So this will happen later today, the decision of Hamas, and I'm sure tomorrow will be some really interesting stories on the fallout of this. But right now, we're waiting to see what happens and will they go forward. Blinken is in Saudi Arabia. He's coming into Israel tomorrow. And so much is going on. It's never, ever a dull moment, is it? It fits what last day's Bible prophecy says. Also, our second program today, Your Bible Questions Answered. We're looking at the book In Search of the Lost Ark, The Quest for the Ark of the Covenant. It's found on our website, Educating Our World, with all of our books. It's a free download under the subject of Bible prophecy. We're on episode 6 as we're going to look at the various journeys now of the ark, as we've talked about some matters that are introductory. Also, too, I want to remind you, on Your Bible Questions Answered, if you're new to us, right now we have 71 videos, 71 different videos answering your Bible questions. So you need to scroll through them and see the sort of things we answer. I think they'll be very, very helpful to you. All right, let's get to it. Headline number 1, and this one is probably the most important of all before we get into the specific stories. There was a opinion piece in one of the Israeli periodicals, and here's what it says: Jews, it is time to return home. Pro-Palestinians' reins have been loosed in Europe and the United States, leading to a wave of protest in cities and on campuses. Despite what we've been told, it is in fact safer to be Jewish in the right-wing dominated countries of Poland and Hungary than in liberal democracies like the U.S. these days. So Jews, come home to Israel. And again, we're going to see more and more of this as we get closer to the time of the end, that people will come on their own accord to the nation of Israel, Jewish people from around the world. And that is sign 4 of our 25 signs. We're near the end. The nation of Israel will return in 2 stages in the last days. We've seen that since 1948 when the modern state was born. They have returned, but they've returned in unbelief of Jesus. And they will be in unbelief of Jesus till the end of this final 7-year period, the 7th week of Daniel with the Great Tribulation, as we've talked about. So all that's in the book, 25 Signs. We're near the end. Get another free download. But we're going to be seeing more and more of these opinion pieces, editorials. Time to come home, Jews. There's no place safe, including the United States of America. All right. As the IDF gears up for the Rafah operation, mediators scramble to reach a truce and a hostage deal. This is what's going on right now. Hamas says it will give its response to the offer today, Monday. The Qatar advisor says Israeli officials who asked for Gaza aid now accuse them of funding Hamas, which they have. Qatar is not a honest broker. That's why they got the Egyptians and they're doing it. But Blinken, now we move to him. He hopes Hamas makes the right decision on this, on an extraordinarily generous truce hostage deal. In other words, Israel will give away the farm. He says the normalization deal between the U.S. and the Saudis is close to completion. So he hasn't seen the IDF plans to keep civilians safe in case of a Rafah incursion. Although there's another story which the United States says they're much pleased with what Israel's done with respect to the humanitarian aid. So again, all this is coming at once. It's amazing how it's all coming together. Now, the next headline: White House says Israel will listen to U.S. questions about potential Rafah incursion. In other words, it says they've agreed to listen to their questions. Let's translate this. The White House says Israel's going to have to listen and agree to what we say they're going to do, not what they wish to do. They're going to listen to our questions and our demands. Because as we've talked in the past, these meetings with the War Cabinet, with Blinken, like in the past, there was like these 5-hour meetings where the whole time he lectured the Israelis on what the U.S. what the U.S. has told them to do, what they must do, and we'll probably see more of that. So Israel's military is poised to evacuate the civilians in Rafah and assault the holdouts, said a senior defense minister. So they're getting ready to start this incursion. So we will see. But here comes the problem. Here's it. Ministers threaten coalition over choice between Rafah op and hostage deal. Two ministers, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, have threatened to withdraw from the government if the prime minister agrees to a deal rather than a Rafah operation. And Minister Gantz suggests he could withdraw if the government chose Rafah. So on the one side, you got Gantz is on the war committee. On the, he's one of the big three or four making the choice, the military echelon, as it were, with Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant and Gantz. He says, if you don't do the hostages right now, I'm going to possibly withdraw. And Ben-Gvir Smotrich says, if you don't do the deal, if you don't do the incursion right now, they will withdraw. So you've got reports on both sides. Amid reports that Israel was preparing to invade Rafah, which offers also to postpone or forego the operation. Not only postpone, maybe even forego it completely, for Hamas releasing certain Israeli hostages kidnapped on October 7th. Government ministers have threatened to withdraw from the coalition should Israel postpone the Rafah operation. And many center and center-left ministers of the Knesset said the government would lose its legitimacy if Israel rejected a hostage deal. Now, again, if Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, if they vote the coalition, the government collapses, and there'll be a caretaker government, there'll be new elections. Netanyahu will be a caretaker prime minister. And so we will see. Again, back and forth, we're going between these two factions there. So God says he is an opponent of the Rafah operation. He says, he says Rafah operation is important, excuse me, but hostages are far more important. It's far more urgent that we get the hostages out, which is absolute nonsense. It's terrible what's going on with these hostages. We agree. But you got 6.5 million people there, and their future is going to depend on what you do. And if you don't dismantle Hamas to the degree you can right now, it's going to come back again, like what's happened in the past. And Israel did not do these things. They stopped short of doing any type of dismantling. And here we are today, 500 miles of tunnel underneath Gaza that they've allowed to be built over the years, which very sophisticated weapons that are there, very sophisticated system, and hence the mess that's going on. So Yair Golan, who is seeking leadership of Israel's left-wing camp in the next election, says, whenever they come, they also call for the return of the hostages now, writing that if Israelis do not feel it in their civic obligation to return their fellow citizens, there's no future for Israeli society. In other words, if you don't get these hostages back right now, we have no future. On the other hand, the right says, look, if you don't go into Rafah right now, there won't be any future because there'll still be Hamas there. So this is the mess that's there. They're saying this publicly. And it's funny, the wisest mind right now is Lieberman, Avigdor Lieberman, who's usually kind of far out. He says he's not part of the coalition, but he says it's time for politicians to take a moment and be quiet, to shut up. You don't need to air this stuff publicly, because what you're seeing is Hamas preying on this. So that's exactly what they're doing. They're dividing Israel on this, and we don't want to conduct our negotiations in the media. He said all the statements and press conferences serve no one except the human monsters of Hamas, who follow every statement religiously. Isn't that the truth? So Israel, as usual, shoots itself in the foot with respect to its leadership. They have a history of doing this. They're doing it right now. So we'll see what happens. Now, we got two other stories that are great. A beautiful scene from Arizona State. Fraternities are helping police dismantle the Hamas camp. Hamas camp was started to be built at ASU, and basically the fraternities boys are there. They're taking it all down and getting rid of it. I used to live right next to ASU for a number of years in Arizona. They became my favorite school for a long time, my favorite football team. So I'm proud of those guys, the Sun Devils. And so not everybody's agreeing with these Hamas camps on campus. So in ASU, they decided to take it down. And then the one I'm really proud of, John Fetterman, the last person I thought I'd ever liked. He's the senator from Pennsylvania that could barely speak. Remember all the problems he had with the mental issues he had during the debates and this. And yet he won the election in Pennsylvania. He says, I don't believe that living in a pup tent for Hamas is really helpful. He's been criticizing all the anti-Israel stuff from the beginning, going against many of his Democratic colleagues. In fact, in an interview, he defended the right for American citizens to protest. Of course, we have a right to protest, but he slammed anti-Israel protesters who were camped out in tents on campuses such as Columbia University and Harvard University. So good for Fetterman. He's speaking out. He's speaking against the grain there, what the Democratic Party is usually in lockstep with. So it's fascinating to watch all this. All right, so here we are, basically at the crossroads. We're waiting for Hamas's response, and then depending on the response, and if Israel responds positively and tries to do some hostage deal, will they really give a 6-week pause for fighting and then talk about the possibility of a final ceasefire? Will Israel really do something like this? This is one of the things that's been suggested. But we will see. We don't know, but we do know this. And here's the great news. We know how it's all going to turn out. Things are going to get worse and worse for Israel. They're going to be isolated from the world. And there'll become a time where they will be invaded, actually, by a number of nations. Ezekiel 38, 39. We know that is coming. It is not on the horizon yet. That is an invasion, like we said, and we've talked about this in some of our Your Bible Questions Answered. It's an invasion led by Russia, has nothing to do with Iran. Iran is one of the participants there, but they're not taking the lead. This has not happened yet. It's still to happen. So hang in there and let's not get ahead of ourselves and say this is the end right now. It is not. There's some things that still need to happen, but the stage is being set for that. So we'll keep you posted. Again, I'm Don Stewart. Thanks so much for watching, and hopefully you can catch the second program today in Searching the Lost Ark, the quest for the Ark of the Covenant, because there's so many wonderful lessons we learn here about God's work in history with the Ark and his word, and just refers to Jesus Christ and his suffering on the cross. So there's so much there for us to learn. Until then, thanks for watching, and may the Lord richly, richly bless.